Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Day in the Life. Today, I'm joined by Meighann Helene, and Meighann works at IBM with me. And I'm not really sure how I first met her. We've seen each other in the office, but I'm going to go with that we met at salsa dance classes at our office because we both love dancing and going to that class. And then we just started hanging out and became friends. So, welcome, Meighann. Excited to catch up with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for considering me as a guest. This is really exciting. And I definitely miss those salsa classes. It's been the one thing about working from home. You get a little lonely and there's no one to dance with except yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely different. So yeah, I wanted to have you on because you just have such an interesting background and like I don't even want to try to introduce all the things you do because you just do so many things. So like kind of like what are you up to these days in your work and personal life, I guess, because you wear a lot of different hats.
Yeah, I have just as many shoes for every one of those hats. Um, I've been with IBM for 3.5 years now. And I've held a multitude of roles ranging from comms to what I currently do, which is I reside on the IBM Data Science and AI Elite team. And within that team, there is a sub team called Strategy and Growth, which also has two sub teams. And I happen to actually have two roles that span either one of those sub teams of strategy and growth. And one is being our global digital strategy and growth strategist. And so focused on kind of all of our digital assets, ranging from websites to content to webinars to video production to a multitude of other items. And then the other item is I do the user experience quality assurance for industry accelerators. So a little bit more on the technical side. And so those are, packaged data science use cases that really help expedite, identifying common pain points across businesses and offering data science solutions for them. And so I help do the user experience quality assurance, but then I also do a lot in terms of process efficiency as well as designing all the UIs and stuff as well. So kind of a little all over the place in terms of work. And then for my life, I know we'll get into these, so I'll kind of just do more of a high level overview. I'm also an artist. As you know, I live at the Santa Barbara Center for Art, Science, and Technology. I'm an artist in residence there, so I'm sure we'll go into more detail about what that is later. And then I am highly involved in the nonprofit community and just our community in general. So having served as an art commissioner for the city, as well as residing on several boards for the arts and new media. So I really try to be involved with bridging that kind of, I'm a huge advocate for STEAM. It's one of those things that boils my blood when I see STEM because they're really missing a critical aspect to what can help us progress, which is the art. And so I really try to advocate for that in my life and in my practice. And then I guess lastly, there's so many things, but lastly, I'm a dancer. And so I work a lot in fire performance and I dance with fire and a lot of ballroom style like salsa and, all that kind of style. So
All the things. But yeah, it's super important to be able to balance the science with the arts. And it sounds like you're doing a lot of that. And so does that tie in with your like educational background? Because I know you've had a lot of different kind of paths that you've taken to get here. So I'd love to kind of hear a little bit more about that, like what kind of education you've had and that kind of thing.
it definitely does bridge that. I'm one of those people. So when I was, younger, I got 5 associates because that's helpful. I don't know why. But ranging from, philosophy, which is one of my major passions, to graphic design, multimedia, and then also like behavioral sciences and arts and humanities. And then I also have, I studied at Berkeley and I studied cognitive science there, which is, I think in general for me, being multidisciplinary has always been very important. And the cog sci degree really focuses on behavioral sciences, cognitive linguistics, cognitive psychology, philosophy, and then we get down to like the neurological and like molecular biological level of the brain. So a lot of neuroscience, and then also the computer engineering and computer programming and computational modeling, because we design our systems off of our mind, whether we do it purposely or not. There's a lot of crossover in what we've done in that realm. And so for me, and plenty of certifications from Berkeley from their various media design schools as well, focused on human-centered design and design innovation and things of that nature. And so for me, what my initial intent was in going back to Berkeley and getting the Cox-Sci degree with the emphasis in kind of art and design and perception was to kind of focus on user experience, which is what I do now, from really that molecular level all the way to the philosophical level, right? So like as specific as you can be and as out there as you can be, and using that to design systems and processes as well as good user experiences, whether it be from event planning to user interface to other items. So I try to use that design and art background to make the best systems as possible while still understanding the technical aspects behind them. So it definitely does bridge.
Yeah, and so with all the different like educational experiences you've had, do you feel like that was kind of necessary to get you to where you are now, or do you think you could have gone at it a different way?
I could have probably done like without like a handful of the degree, or at least been more strategic in, getting more higher education, like a PhD or something like that. But I think to your point, I mean, everything we do contributes to who we become and what comes out of it. And so my journey would probably have been very different had I not gone about it that route. But I particularly like the balance that I've had, especially because I have a large kind of behavioral science and philosophical background. I like being able to apply those to data science and to what our team's doing in AI, and trying to understand the humanity behind it, right? So that's kind of even the human-centric design. And to me, I feel like there's a lot of room in this industry for AI ethicists, like ethical AI, and really understanding the implications of AI and data science in our community. And so I think that's something that as I progress my career, I'm going to be more inclined to study and have as a niche and expertise, because I think my educational broadness really lends itself to identifying some of those issues from a multitude of different perspectives.
Yeah, I just asked that because I love education too. Like if I could just be in school all the time, I would be like happy. I just love I
Me
love
too.
learning. And so I asked that just because I feel like just part of just kind of the reason I wanted to do this show is just kind of explore like career paths or like life
Yeah.
paths. And I definitely do agree that like, yeah, all of our life experiences contribute to where we are, but then like if maybe you could have done it differently, is there something you would have done?
Yeah, I think I would have done like 3 less associate's degrees.
Like made you who you are, but and
Yeah,
maybe it'll come up in some way you haven't anticipated later.
when I graduated from Santa Barbara City College, I was talking to the counselor, and originally my intent was to just graduate with the multimedia degree and the philosophy degree. And then when I was going to Berkeley, I was actually a spring ad. I only had 1 more semester to finish my graphic design degree. So I actually went up to Berkeley and finished that remotely. But when I spoke with the counselor, she was like, you also qualify for like an arts and humanities degree and a behavioral science degree. Do you want them? And I was like, I mean, yeah, like if I earn them, like I'll take them. Like theoretically paid for them already. Like
Yeah, totally. Are you thinking about getting a PhD? Because you mentioned that.
I think down the line, even getting an MBA would be fun, or even an MFA. Most likely the MBA would be the most strategic choice in terms of career trajectory at IBM or elsewhere in the future, I don't think I would go back to school at this age again. I was already an older student when I decided to go back to school and go to Berkeley. And I don't want to do that again. I think that I would do like an online program and go from there. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, like talking about your role at IBM, you as you mentioned, you started in comms and then moved into the I think you moved it to a few different positions to get to the role you are now. And so I'm kind of curious to like hear a little bit more about your experience of shifting careers and like what kind of steps did you do to make that happen to kind of get yourself into those positions?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a highly strategic move. So way back when we had gotten, uh, when I was still studying at Cal, we had gotten an email about an open position, but it was a full-time position, but it was a communication specialist. I had been a director and, a manager for many years at that point. And it was very much like a new hire position. And so even though that was the industry I was trying to get out of, I was like, okay. And I did some research and was like, all right, IBM has great inward mobility. They really like to kind of support you to grow your career, even if it's a complete change of career. So it's like, all right, this seems like a good place to get a foot in the door, right? And so I had like kind of emailed and like was like, I don't want to waste your time. I'm overqualified for this position. Like, is there some other position available for the summer? And they were like, well, not yet, but we actually kind of need one. And so basically an internship was created, but then I obviously had to go through the interview process and compete for it with, varying other candidates, but got the role. And part of the reason that I wanted to do that was one, I knew as a comms role, I would have a unique lifeline to a lot of executives very quickly, that a lot of people who come in at dev or other roles might not get, primarily because I was doing executive comms. And so I knew that would be a good way to kind of start getting lots of little toes and little ponds and and figure that out. And so, as I did the summer internship or a student associative position, they extended it and I worked part-time for another semester and then they extended it another time for part-time. So I was like coming down to SVL, to the Silicon Valley lab, where you were also like 4 a.m. on Mondays and leaving at like noon, 4 a.m. in the mornings, and then leaving at noon to get to class, where I had class from like 2 to 8. Like, it was pretty intense, but that turned into a communications management role, which I took on after a short sabbatical to do a different artist in residency in between, and then start the communications role. And once I was there, kept working with a myriad of different individuals and eventually took on the role of global program manager for the machine learning hub, where I was facilitating a major redesign as well as all the project management. And so that helped get me even more into kind of the technical realm, as well as some of the design aspects that I was doing. And I was doing a lot of design already, even though that wasn't officially part of my job role per se, right? And some video production as well, because I do that and have a lot of films in the film festival circuit and lots of laurels and all that jazz. And so through that role, I was then able to be introduced to the DSE, the Data Science and AI Elite team, where I reside now, and kind of come to them which is really interesting because the DSE is almost like a startup within IBM in a lot of senses, or at least the strategy and growth team was at the time. So there was a lot of opportunity to figure out what we want to do and to come up with that ourselves versus entering some of the maybe more structured departments or organizations within IBM that have had years of cultivating. It really felt like it was a great opportunity to breathe new life into that. And so that's when I started as the digital strategist. And then after about 7 months of doing that, we had, some attrition and no backfills and that kind of jazz, and wound up taking a secondary role, which is the role that I am currently doing with the UX QA for the industry accelerators. And that was actually my original end goal, like my long game plan was like, all right, get the foot in the door, meet the right people, work on the right projects. And I'm going to get to, user experience, like hopefully within 3 years. And I basically accomplished that. So it was like slightly under 3 years. So I felt good about that.
Yeah.
But it's all about meeting the right people, but like also not to expand upon that, to not just be in your department or working on your projects. I met you through salsa primarily. I get involved with the art events. I get involved with a lot of the woman-led events. So I was helping, facilitate some of the SVL Superwoman groups events, trying to organize those. So it's meeting the right people through the varying different communities too, because you never know who's gonna be like, oh wow, like this person can do this, like my team needs that, maybe there's an opportunity there. So you just never know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. So what's a day in the life like for you at work?
Very varying. Some days like today are like 8 hours straight of meetings for some reason. But working on a lot of different projects, a lot have to do with design, a lot have to do with optimization. I do a lot of the UX and UI design for a lot of different items. So, you as a UX researcher and other items, there's obviously a factor of that in terms of understanding the audience I'm designing for, interviewing or determining the various personas, and making sure that whatever systems or process or dashboard or whatever it might be addresses those issues. So I'd say a lot of meetings. I've been trying to be better about taking meetings outside, because it's just the nature of us working from home, right? This is my study, my living room, and my office, and so we do have, where I live at SB Cast, we do have some beautiful rooftop areas and picnic areas and various communal areas that like I try to go out there more for meetings now, or even take ones that I know are just going to basically be phone calls where nobody puts their screen on and is sharing anything. I'll just take those as phone calls now and maybe go for a walk around the block or to the beach. I'm super fortunate that I live like a 7-minute walk from the beach. So it can be a nice little, excursion to get your mind thinking about other things too. But yes, so a lot of design, a lot of meetings. I'd say that's a lot of process efficiency. Yeah.
So yeah, speaking
So
about
that's
where
my
you
favorite
are
part.
now, like, oh, well, how does one become an artist in residence? How did you, like, what is your setup like?
Yeah, so it is an application process. This is actually my second artist in residency here. I did one in between when I graduated from Cal and before I started full time. And then this is my second one. That one was only 5 weeks, and that one I was fortunate enough to be in the penthouse. There's 2 penthouse units that are slightly more supplemented and they're furnished and all that. And that culminated in a solo show that I did with this 3D printed project that I was working on. And so that focused on light and shadow. But the sculptures that I was playing with the light and shadow, I had 3D printed. And this current one, I basically reapplied. It was kind of during COVID. Like everybody else has had more personal things happen in the last 2 years than we care to recall. But basically unexpectedly needed to move for my current situation. And things were so up in the air back then. It was Memorial Day of 2020, where it was like, okay, are we going back to the office? I had just gotten promoted to this new role. So like my office was even shifting. And I was like, okay, I just have to put everything in storage and like live around Airbnbs until we figure it out. And then after that kind of got a little old, and I realized that this was going to be a little bit longer than I think we expected in terms of the timeline for the pandemic. Then I made the decision to, okay, make some sort of permanent solution. And so that was to apply here and come back here. And so it's a really, really cool area. I think there's like 13 units or something. At any given time, there's about anywhere from like, I'd say like 9 to 16, 17 people living here. And then there's also just work studios that are art studios, that there's various designers and video producers, musicians. There's a NASA scientist here, somebody who was working for Mattel, architects. It is art, science, and technology. So it's not limited to just the crazy artists, even though everybody here is kind of a crazy, like we're kind of all crazy artists and mad scientists at the same time. So it's a very interesting community to be part of. But yeah, it's just an application process. And then these leases are typically about 18 months at length, but you can renew them. And then I had an art studio also on the property, which is a separate unit, where I was doing a lot of my art. So
Yeah. So like what is, I guess, required of you as an artist in residence, or what does that mean?
there is not necessarily anything required for this particular artist in residency, although a lot of them do have some sort of, you're required to do a show or whatever. There's no requirement for that. It's just more a facilitation, like to collaborate and work together and kind of expand the kind of creative repertoire by working with engineers and designers and scientists and weird strange artists and dancers and whatever. There's a lot of communal spaces such as the courtyard and the picnic areas, but there's also a back workshop with welding and woodworking and all those tools, as well as a warehouse with a ton of 3D printers and laser cutters. It's very much a maker space. And I think one of the best advantages, and something that a group of my friends actually helped start here, is the art critique. So we were doing them once a week, but COVID and all that, but now we're going to do them probably about once a month. And what those are, everybody comes, including members of the community. It was shut down privately during COVID, but now we've kind of expanded it again. Bring their artwork or whatever they're working on and basically get an opportunity to present it, and then also get feedback on it. And it's not your traditional art critique style. We don't follow that format, but you get such a variety of feedback from all these different wonderful minds. And it really helps elevate whatever you're working on to the next level. And so there's not like a requirement in that you have to be working on something specifically, but everybody here is working probably on like 5 or 6 different things. And so we just try to like work together to like bounce ideas off each other, or, just even have a glass of wine on the rooftop and watch the sunset, but still kind of talking about our projects and what we're focused on.
Cool. Yeah. Like, I guess just like kind of a logistical question. Is it like discounted rent, or like do you have to pay for the like the facilities that you use, or how does like that kind of work?
So you pay for your own materials. It's not necessarily per se a discounted rent. However, for what we get, I mean, we're 400 square foot studios plus all the common areas. There's also a sauna and a hot tub and like an outdoor shower for like, the beach. And we're also proximity. I mean, it takes me less than 10 minutes to get to both farmers markets, downtown, or the beach. So for where we are, this location and what is offered would probably be like twice as much. But it's not like advertised as a discount, but it most certainly is cheaper than if I were to live in the same location, not in an artist in residency situation.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, especially for the location. I'm like so spoiled. I'm actually gonna walk to the farmers market after this, and it's very Santa Barbara. You have your little farmers market basket. So I'm very spoiled here in a lot of ways.
That's awesome. Is it like a farmer's market like all week?
So there's a farmer's market every single day in Santa Barbara, but at a different location. So sometimes it's in Montecito, sometimes it's up north in Goleta, but there's two that are within walking distance of me on Tuesdays and Saturdays.
Nice.
So I kind of make that my, even if I don't even really need anything, I just kind of like to walk around with a basket, like maybe get a flower or something. Like it's just kind of nice. You see people, it's very much like a social thing. And
Yeah.
it's only recently started up again, since the pandemic. I mean, everything was shut down. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Farmers markets are really fun.
yeah, I agree.
Well, yeah. Speaking of that and art and everything, what do you do outside of work to decompress?
Yeah, so primarily my art and dance, and occasionally work on some videos. I was in production of a feature film here in Santa Barbara pre-pandemic, working with one of the directors that I've collaborated with much over the years. I think we have like probably together on our projects at least 20 laurels from doing the film festival circuit. And so I love video production. It's actually probably my favorite thing to do. The New Yorker in me, I like to be bossy a little bit. And being a producer and a director, like you really get to fill that role and like they have to listen to you or they're, out. So I love doing that. And then my art is really important. So and I can kind of go into more right now, my current series, but even I make like little jewelry out of some of the art. So like, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. I don't think it's doing it justice, but this is a real feather that I've cold casted in bronze and then used a special chemical, like a proprietary chemical process to expedite its oxidization. But I basically paint with that to get very specific oxidization and then coat it with resin to make like jewelry. And I do this with sand dollars and feathers and other organic materials because I really enjoy doing organic things to organic things, but in inorganic ways, because that's kind of part of the science and the crossing the threshold of like what's possible. And I also paint abstractly with this. So right now, the series that I just a solo art show for, it's called Rusted Roots, really focused on painting abstractly with iron, copper, and bronze, and then painting abstractly with the oxidization. And so you get some really cool stuff. And so like I have like wood that's rusted because I've treated it with iron and then like rusted it and then like paint with the other stuff on it. So like that is like when I just feel like being a little bit more like chaotic and crazy and I'm covered in paint for a week and a half and like really delve into that. And then the last thing is probably one of the most important things to me, and that is dancing. So dancing has kind of always been, I'd say, my primary release, like energetically. I find it highly therapeutic. And here in town, there's 2 or 3 days a week that there's something called like ecstatic dance or silent disco that's hosted on the beach. And I go religiously. Like it's kind of my church and my therapy. And you really can like let loose. And they did a really good job of, it used to be indoors, but then they made it outdoors by the beach. And it's super social distance, like, and you've got silent disco headphones on. So you're kind of only hearing the music in your own head. So this way there's no noise violation to anybody else on the beach or anything like that. But that is 100% the number one thing that I do to decompress. Like if I don't go to that during a week, like I lose my mind. Like, and then when I do it at night, I do it with fire. And that to me has always been something even more powerful, because there's something about fire performing and flowing and, flow arts in general, that you really get into this meditative state. And once you learn kind of some of the techniques and moves, it can also be like highly nerdy in terms of the mathematics of it and like the different isometrics and like sacred geometry and different shapes that you can make. So some of the people that do it get like, you can almost see like the numbers going off in their head as they're doing it, like the calculus numbers, like, coming up with the forms and the shapes. But for me, we owe so much of our existence to fire as a human species. I mean, without its cultivation, we would not have been warm, we would not have eaten, we would not have scared other animals off. And there's something really beautiful and empowering about understanding fire and dancing with it and manipulating it and just like feeling the power it's had for us and how we can continue that power. Yeah.
Really cool. My mom is going to listen to this and be like, oh no, Rachel's going to start fire dancing because I've always really.
Well, I'm happy to give you some Zoom lessons.
That'd be awesome.
I have one of the tools actually right here. Previous party, but like these are like fire fans. I'll show you. So like these light on fire, and then you can make different shapes with them, and then spin them, and they do a lot more than us looking at them like this. But they're a lot of fun, and it's definitely a release and super, super empowering.
Yeah. I went to like a women's circle thing recently where the host just played some music and then everybody just kind of danced to their own whatever. We just felt like moving. It started off kind of as like a just move your body like the way your body needs to move, kind of like stretching, like stretch out what you need to move. And then it just like evolved into just kind of dancing. And it was the coolest thing. Like just seeing all these women just kind of like dancing to like whatever they felt like dancing. It was, I don't know, it just like felt very, very powerful. Like you said, it was interesting.
And that's very much one of the like mentalities behind ecstatic dance is, especially when you do like the contact improv and other forms of ecstatic dance, you're not supposed to, right? Like there's a whatever, but do whatever you want. But it's more geared towards naturally moving your body in all these weird ways that you feel versus like the structured, oh, I'm doing a hip hop move now, or oh, I'm salsa dancing now, or those kind of more formalized steps and moves that we've ingrained in ourselves. It's really meant to like let your body go and just kind of let it flow and feels what good to your body. So that's definitely along the same lines. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I'll have to look that up because that sounds really fun because I really enjoyed that experience that I had. And then like I do like the structured dancing, but then the other part is so important too, I think.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did want to talk a little bit more about like your interest in STEAM and science and art.
Yeah.
What in particular about that gets you excited?
So I think it's really overlooked a lot, especially in the technological community. Um, I think sometimes people get so focused on the tech or the data or the programming or the whatever, where it's very, that they forget one, who we're designing items for, right? So you lose this human centric design. And part of design is being artistic, even though it is more formalized. And when you look at these like stories from, eons ago, gosh, I'm forgetting the woman's name, but there was this famous case, I think it was Intel, who hired this like artist to work on computers, like we're talking the 70s, 80s, like well before they were mainstream, and they had phenomenal results because it introduced new ways to thinking to individuals whose, and I don't want to say capabilities of thinking are limited, because that's by no means what I mean, but we just all have a very different way of thinking. And, it goes back to IBM having a diverse, empowered team, right? That's one of our things that we, advocate for. And to me, the art is critical to the diversity of the success of projects. It helps you think out of the box. It helps you realize things you might not have realized before. I think it even help people understand, the root of the problem more. Sometimes, people say, oh, this is our problem. And then people are like, oh, okay, I go to fix it. But meanwhile, there wasn't like the 5 whys, there wasn't the UX research, there wasn't the contemplation of like, what are we really trying to solve here? And then using that artistic capability to increase that. And even just in the way that we talk about tech or come up with ways to teach children about tech or coding or whatever. When you introduce artists into that, you get minds that want to do gamification or like come up with this that might be a creative way of introducing kids to technology. And so it really just goes to showing the possibilities and being a little bit more creative in the possibilities. I think it's why I like the language processing. So I've used processing a lot in my own art, which is a coding language, but very specific to artists. I mean, it's primarily used by artists. And a lot of like LED artists, but as well as multimedia artists and things like that. And so even that, I don't think processing, and this is, me being presumptuous, but probably would not have come about in the way that it has if there weren't artists and designers who wanted to also use technology.
Yeah, that's really cool. In grad school, we used processing for a few things, and I did I did a project on like processing tweets into poetry and just other things. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I kind of miss doing that. I'm like, just talking to you, I'm like, man, I want to get back to my weird like steamy projects that I did.
I know. Yeah, I definitely have to get back more into it as well. And then it's also, it's something that I really want to advocate for in the community, so you mentioned, some of my board involvement. So the two primary boards that I'm involved with currently, one is called Fishbone, which I'm treasurer of that board. And it's basically art collaborative of artists, engineers, designers, scientists, the dancers, the usual. And we host event cells, we host classes, we are complete, 501c3, so free to the community. We're completely reliant on donations, and in the previously on the events that we would host and, charging tickets for those. Luckily, we were able to get some grants and some loans over the pandemic that we've been able to stay afloat. But bringing those people together in the community, like Santa Barbara is so interesting because for a while we had the highest per capita nonprofit, per person. I think Marin beats us out, but just a small margin now. There's innovative thought here. We had before Silicon Valley too, we actually had highest per capita patents for a while. And Amazon has an office here now. Google has had a secret office here for a very long time. There's tons of tech, tons of defense. And like, I think people forget that that's in Santa Barbara. And so for me, I've always wanted to bridge those communities and make sure that they're aware that they're here. And then what comes out of that is these glorious, ridiculous plays and events and lots of different things that we've thrown. And then the other is TVSB, which stands for, TV Santa Barbara. And so basically, I always tell people it's like Wayne's World, but for Santa Barbara, right? Because Wayne's World had the public access station, and that's what we are. We have two public access stations, 17 and 71. And then we also have a multimedia production studio for voice recording, podcasts, multiple production studios with green screens, multiple areas that we can record, a multimedia center. But what's important with that is like the media literacy. Like we do camps for children, and we do even like media literacy for senior citizens, like how to use an iPhone or how to do this, or like how to avoid an internet scam. Like, so there's like other stuff that can come out of that can ripple out and help people in other ways. But for that one, because we're a production studio, we want to empower the community to make media that matters. And that's because everybody has a voice. And so we want to make sure that the capabilities to have that voice are heard. And to me, that's super important because with fake news and, all the other crackdowns on media, like we have these resources. Every single one of our communities probably has a public access station or something media access station, which, ours is both. And it's free and open to use the community. Like, why would you not promote that and take advantage of it? And even that can be used to promote tech or whatever. I mean, we've brought our facility into the digital era. Like we are all HD now. And so that's kind of the other thing is like when you have artists and people that are interested in this and then they understand the tech, you can elevate the two together versus, years ago when I first got involved, like all of our equipment was like so old and archaic. It was like, all right, we gotta we gotta modernize here.
Get with the times.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I know you're really passionate about like underrepresented communities, like women in tech, and also in like inclusivity. So, what have you? I know I'm not sure what I'm trying to ask. Like, I think that's just like a really important subject to you. So I just wanted to bring that up and like see what you wanted to say about that.
I mean, not for nothing. I think one of the underlying causalities of me being that passionate is because growing up and for much of my adult life until recently, I was the underserved. I never thought that I would get a bachelor's degree, nonetheless one from Berkeley. I never even thought I would get any degree. It was kind of a shock when I got the city college ones, just because of the way my life progressed from a very young age, and various things that I've gone through. It's not really like a family where that was a thing. And I didn't have a lot of resources and I didn't have a lot of opportunity. And so for me, as I've become more comfortable and more set in what my future is, I've always tried to like give back more to the community than I take back, because I know even when I'm having a hard time, there's always somebody having a more difficult time. And there's a lot of unseen issues that don't get visibility. And so I try to really advocate for that. I'm primarily involved with like, women in tech or women in STEAM, and then like LGBTQ plus, because I'm within that community so openly. And so I want to give voice to people that might be afraid to speak up about who they are and what their desires are, because there's no reason not to be yourself, right? And I get that it's difficult for people. And I mean, I only came out, this year, during like the day to come out. I don't know. But I think it's important because we're all struggling in ways that we don't understand. And like, if there's something that I can do that my story or, my philanthropy or, my volunteering or my work on the boards or, as a commissioner can help, then I'm always going to do that.
Yeah, I love that. I love kind of what you share on LinkedIn. Like I like following you on LinkedIn because
Oh, thank you.
you share like, I guess, I get tired of people being like, oh, I'm hiring, like that's all people talk about. And like, I like seeing all the different things that you do and that you share about. And yeah, I remember seeing you come out and I was like, that's just really cool. And it's like great that you felt comfortable to do that and felt supported to do that finally. I mean, I'm sure it was really, really hard and
It was nerve-wracking.
yeah.
Like I definitely think I like took a shot of whiskey beforehand. And I think I actually did it while, so there was some event that one of my colleagues actually was helping host for that community, and it was all about coming out and being open and how to have those conversations, and that's what the whole like webinar was about. And I was kind of just had this like moment, and I was like, all right, we're doing it, like here we are. And it just felt right. I was like, why not? Like if it helps somebody else on their journey, then that's what it's meant to be. And we're only gonna hopefully get more progressive as a country and as a society. And so it's acts like that are gonna help open the floodgates for other people to feel more open and included. And inclusivity is always something that's been, I think, really important to me, when especially like growing up. Like I didn't really fit in. I was kind of total weirdo. Like I was like a secret nerd, but like also like a complete weirdo, like, but then like also a cheerleader. So people were confused and like, and I think I never fit in with a lot of people. And so I'm very hypersensitive to being empathetic and compassionate to other people, especially people that don't feel included, just because I know so thoroughly what that feels like. So I'm like incredibly hypersensitive to it.
Yeah. Well, that's all I had for today. It's been really great catching up with you and chatting. And thanks for sharing everything. This is really fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. I look forward to when it comes out.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a single show. Interested in being on the show? Know someone that might be a good fit? Use the nomination form in the description.